Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. As you can see from the title of this video, this is going to be the third episode of my Thriving in Spite of series. It has been a while since I recorded one of these episodes. I'm going to try and be a little bit more regular with them. So this one, again, as you can see from the title, is going to be talking about mental health, talking about finding a therapist and thriving in spite of needing a therapist. I'm going to separate this video into three parts. So first, I'm going to talk about my own mental health struggles. Second, I'm going to talk about how to find a therapist, and then third, I'm going to talk about how to get the most out of therapy. I wanted to film this video because I feel like mental health struggles are still quite taboo to talk about or make people very uncomfortable when you talk about your mental health struggles. I think it's definitely gotten better. Even a few years ago, I think people were a lot more ashamed. If they were struggling, they really kept it to themselves, and even talking about having a therapist was like you really didn't want people to know, because having a therapist was seen as like, oh, there must be something really wrong with you, which is also wrong, because if something is really wrong with you and you need a therapist, like that shouldn't be looked down upon. Overall, I think talking about mental health has become less taboo, but I still think we have a very long way to go. As someone that does have mental health struggles and sees a therapist, I would like to contribute to making it less taboo of a topic to talk about and make people feel more normal about it. It shouldn't be anything that anyone should be ashamed of. So to start, with my mental health struggles, I have struggled with depression and anxiety, then also disordered eating in the past. I've not been officially diagnosed with any type of disordered eating, so I'm not going to focus on that, because I do think it's important to focus on what you're actually diagnosed with. I actually think I've had anxiety for a while from when I was little, but I just didn't know what it was. When I think back to some things I did, I'm like, yeah, definitely anxious behavior. And it's probably only gotten worse as I got older. And the depression was more something that I started to struggle with in my teen years, and kind of it progressively getting worse. One of my most worst periods was actually during undergrad, which I think at the time not many people knew. And then I also went through a very, very rough period last year. And so with that, I've been in therapy twice. I've probably needed therapy more often, but again, because of that taboo, it was something that I kind of like pushed to the side a lot. I'd be like, oh, it's probably something that would help me, but I don't have time for it. Oh, it's probably something that would help me, but I don't have the funds for it, and just kind of kept pushing it away. And I just wish I had gone sooner. So I have been in therapy twice. The first time was during undergrad for about 10 months, mostly when I was going through that very rough period. And it took me a while to actually commit to therapy while I was going through that rough period, and then it did help pretty quickly. And then now I've been in therapy since September of 2020, so about over a year now, because now the year's almost done. Right now I'm in more of like a maintenance phase. I guess there's a difference between like necessity and a maintenance phase. So when I first started therapy in September, I was having sessions on a weekly basis. Then I went to bi-weekly, so every other week. And now I'm actually just switched to once a month, which is a little bit scary, because it makes me think like, oh, what if something goes wrong and I'm not doing well? But at the same time, it's also so exciting, because that means I am progressing, and it's something that my therapist has seen in me, that I'm coming up with those coping skills and going through kind of like what my therapist has been helping me think through when I'm having struggles. I'm getting better at doing that myself. And yeah, it's a good thing that I'm just not needing as many sessions. So now to move on to tips on how to find a therapist. First, figure out if your insurance covers mental health rather than just physical health. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of insurances do actually cover mental health, so therapy and things like that, but it's not really like put on blast, so you kind of have to do the research yourself. When I was in therapy during undergrad, there was some kind of program that made it completely free, so I didn't have to worry about paying for it then, but the sessions were also very sporadic. I think I only went like once a month, because that was like the free tier level. And then when I was working, my insurance did cover a fair amount of my therapy. It wasn't completely free, but made it much, much cheaper. And then now that I haven't been working since April, and I'm on my husband's insurance, his insurance still does cover it a little bit. Again, it's still not free, but therapy is very, very expensive. So if your insurance covers even half or like any part of it, it's going to save you a lot of money. And that could be its own Thriving in Spite of episode itself. I do think therapy should be a lot cheaper, because it's something that people that need it. So making it really expensive obviously makes it just less accessible, probably to those that need it the most. And it's just very unfortunate that way, but I won't go deep into that. So yeah, first figure out if your insurance will cover your therapy. If you're not sure what your insurance covers, you can probably actually ask the HR person within your job. And then once you figure out, or you can actually, if you know like your insurance company, which you probably should, you can search for a therapist that your insurance covers. So if you do like a Google search, usually what comes up, you can like filter it for your insurance. That's something that I did, and that made it a lot easier. And funny enough for me, my therapist that I've had since September, there was a few months that my insurance did not cover any part of the therapy, and because I loved her so much and she was so helpful, I actually continue to see her, and I just paid for that completely out of pocket. So that shows you how helpful therapy can be, because it was not cheap. It was definitely worth it mental health wise, and I don't regret it at all. I would have honestly paid double to feel as good as I do now versus how terrible I felt at that time. The next tip with finding a therapist, there is going to be a lot of trial and error, almost like dating, which probably sounds weird, but you know when you go on a date with someone, unless it goes absolutely terribly, like the first date, like you're just like, I'm fully not into this person, you usually give them maybe like 2 or 3 chances to kind of see if you vibe together. Take it the same thing with a therapist. Your first session, they, just as much as you are getting to know them, they're getting to know you. You're not going to go away from that first session and be like, right, I got all the tips, I'm 100% better, they are so helpful, this, and this, like I feel great. It's not going to be like that, because they need a chance to even figure out what's going on with you. And then even by like that second session, they're still figuring out, you're still figuring out. If you are not the most extroverted person in the world, you're probably like a little bit more shy and not super outspoken, so that can take a little bit to even get used to each other and just to make sure that you vibe. So I would say at least give a therapist 2 sessions, probably 3. I know that can be a lot, especially let's say your insurance doesn't cover, or even if your insurance does, you don't want to feel like you're wasting money. But at the same time, if you just continually find one therapist, give them a session and drop them, you're never going to, or I won't say never, but more likely you're not going to find that therapist, because you're not even giving them a chance. You might get lucky and find the best therapist the first session and be like, this is definitely it, I can tell, but likely it's not going to be that way. And I think it depends what kind of season of life you're in when it comes to what therapist will be best for you. When I was in therapy during undergrad, I say undergrad, college, school, whatever, but when I was in undergrad, my therapist was this very old Black woman, and I feel like that's what I needed at a time, more like a parent or grandparent figure that just kind of made me feel safe and comforted. It's because I was away from home, and at the time that's exactly what I needed. Now my therapist is a woman that's maybe a few years older than me. I don't know her exact age, nor am I going to ask, but from what we've discussed, I can tell she's at oldest a few years older than me, and that is perfect to what I need right now. More like a therapist, but also like a peer, so we can talk about things that she can relate to, because we're on like our life right now is on a similar spectrums, and that's been very helpful for me right now. But if we had switched those, like let's say when I was in undergrad, if I had the therapist I had now, like someone my own age, which I don't even know how someone would be a therapist in their late teens, early 20s, but even if I had a therapist that was like 25 while I was in undergrad, I don't think it would have been as helpful for what I needed at that time. And the same thing now. I think if I had a more older therapist right now, it wouldn't be as helpful to what I needed. And this is something that, if you've watched the show This Is Us, that they discussed in that show too. Randall, the Black triplet, he started seeing a therapist, and he kept going to like older white women, and eventually one of the therapists was just like, why do you keep coming to someone that like is like your mom, who is part of where your issues come from? And then also, I'm an older white woman and you're a Black man, like I'm just not going to be able to relate to you the same way. And obviously it's a show, but good for her for saying that, because I think it's true. I would say, especially if you're watching this and you're a Black woman, find a Black therapist. They're going to be able to relate to you a lot better. Some people might not like that I'm saying that, but there's just some things that people of color, and within that, like different people of color experience and go through, that white people that just don't and aren't really able to relate to or speak to in the same way. You don't want to say something part of your experience because you're Black or someone of color, and then your therapist just look at you with a blank face or be like, wow, that must be really hard, because they just don't understand that level of, they don't have that same level of understanding because they've never experienced anything like it. Versus right now, it is so nice to speak so freely to my therapist, because I know things that I talk about race-based, she 100% can relate to it, most likely. And then, of course, I was saying the dating thing. After a few sessions, if you're just not vibing with your therapist at all, don't continue just because you feel like you don't want to start over the process again. If we're relating it to dating, you can go on 2 or 3 dates with someone and be like, like they're all right, like I don't hate them, there's nothing wrong with them, but you know that you're kind of feeling like about them, but you just continue because it's nice to at least be with someone. That also sounds so bad, but I know that, like, especially when you're younger, that was at least my experience when I was dating like 18, 19. It's like you're just kind of like, like I don't know, I don't feel some type of way about them, but I also don't hate them, so why not just continue? I would encourage you not to do that with a therapist. If you get past that 3rd session and you still are just kind of feeling like, it's all right, start over. It's annoying to start over. It's going to be a process to start over. You might start to feel like you're never going to find the right therapist, but I'm telling you, it is 100% worth it. You will, once you find the right therapist, it's going to make all the difference. And the last thing that I did want to talk about is how to get the most out of therapy. So you are going to get out of therapy what you put into it. That might sound easier said than done, but if you are dishonest with your therapist, if you are not as open with your therapist, you obviously aren't going to get as much out of it, because how can they help you if you're not being open or if you're being dishonest? I know, so I spoke about at the beginning of this video how I have not been officially diagnosed with any disordered eating, but I'm pretty sure I had some issues. So especially in undergrad, something that not many people knew, is I was heavily struggling with disordered eating during a certain period. And my therapist at the time, she actually recognized that. I'm not sure how she did, because it's not like I was super thin, that it was, I think this is also a misconception that people have when it comes to disordered eating. They actually look at people's body types and then they go off of that. I've never been like abnormally thin, so it wasn't clear to anyone, but somehow she picked up on it and she actually referred me to someone that specialized in disordered eating. And I went to this woman and I just lied. I fully lied to her. The woman bought it, sadly, and I just continued on, and that was it. And I was done with that. So if I had been dishonest with my actual therapist too, I probably wouldn't have got as much out of it. And even now with my therapist, I'm so open. I'm as honest as possible, because I know after that experience that is how I'm going to benefit fully from it. I mean, I can't say for sure because you're not in their minds, but your therapist is likely not judging you. It's their job. They've probably encountered many people like you, if not, I'm not going to say worse, but if not in situations that are more grave or extreme than you are, than your situation. So don't think that they're going to judge you. Don't feel uncomfortable, because that is their job. Like, that is why you're paying them. Don't pay them to be dishonest with them. Like, then save your money. That doesn't make any sense. Be open, even when it's uncomfortable. I understand it being uncomfortable. I'm someone that I don't even really like sharing things. Like, the things that I share with my therapist are not things I like sharing with even people closest to me. I don't ever like to be a burden to people, which is something I'm also working on and have gotten a lot better. So I understand not wanting to be open and not wanting to fully disclose how you're feeling to someone, but I am telling you, it will help if you're fully honest with them. And if you're not, again, you might as well just save your money, because I don't think you're going to get as much out of it. And part of that is going to be finding a therapist that you feel comfortable with, because the more you feel comfortable with someone, the more you're probably likely to be open and honest with them. So I think that's everything that I want to touch on in this Thriving in Spite of episode. This one is definitely... I think my baby's also crying, so... So overall, I think probably everyone could benefit from therapy. Again, probably more people need it than others. And I don't think anyone should be ashamed of their mental health struggles. I hope as we continue on, people get more open and feel more comfortable sharing their struggles with people. I know that through my struggles in undergrad and then this last year, I've kind of had to put on a quote unquote brave face, because I wasn't sharing that I was struggling with many people. And so I kind of felt like I just had to kind of hide behind a smile and pretend that everything was okay and I was still functioning well, so to the outside world everything was fine. And that's not okay. If you're feeling that way, I really encourage you to seek out therapy if you're able to financially afford it. And if you can't, speak to someone that you feel really comfortable with and open up to them, because it will help. And you shouldn't have to go through whatever you're going through completely alone. That's not fair, and that's not good for you mentally. And just a final reminder that you really never know what someone is going through. So you should just be kind to people, because, yeah, I'm just going to leave it on that. Just be kind to people, because you never know what people are going through. I know that's not really what this episode is about, but I think that really ties into the mental health struggles. A lot of people, most people are struggling in some way. So just don't assume. Don't be mean to people. Just be nice. I'm going to end this episode there. It's been a while since I recorded one of these, so it might be a little jumbly. I was looking down at notes, looking up, I don't know, but I hope you got something out of it, and I hope you enjoyed hanging out with me. Bye.